Hi, dear friends. Some words of Torah for Parshat Naso. Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov is a character in Fyodor Dostoevsky's classic Crime and Punishment from 1866. He's a tragic figure who commits a horrible crime. He murders an old widow and her sister. Initially, he feels no remorse, rationalizing that these women were worthless people of no value to anyone. Later, he cannot live with his guilt and eventually, through the influence of his beloved Sonia, confesses to his crime. In analyzing what brought Raskolnikov to commit murder, we read about his personality from just a small paragraph at the beginning of the book. And I quote, "It was remarkable that Raskolnikov had hardly any friends at the university. He kept aloof from everyone, went to see no one, and did not welcome anyone who came to see him, and indeed everyone soon gave up on him. He was very poor, and there was a sort of haughty pride and reserve about him, as though he were keeping something to himself. He seemed to some of his comrades to look down upon them all as children, as though he were superior in development, knowledge, and convictions, as though their beliefs and interests were beneath him." Unquote. We learn from this story about the value of living within a community. One learns not only how to get along with others, but also how to see the value in others. Living an isolated existence can cause a person to objectify others and to think that one is truly different and elevated above everyone else. When we're compelled to live with others, however, we begin to realize that reality isn't all about me, but there is rather a much larger collective, and that other people's desires and needs have to be met alongside my own. To me, this is what the whole part of Parshat Naso is addressing. Because the Torah is outlining the formation of the Israelite camp in the desert, it would be natural for someone to question why it's necessary to live as part of this tight-knit community in the first place. Why not let a person live outside the camp, allowing them more independence and added living space? The Torah answers this question by presenting us with a few mitzvot that deal with the consequences of living in isolation and becoming like Raskolnikov. The first mitzvah of our parsha tells us to temporarily eject certain individuals from the camp, those who have become ritually defiled, either through leprosy, bodily emissions, or contact with the dead. Once purified, these people may return to the camp. This idea of isolation immediately prompts the Torah to inform us why it's not good to be alone, away from community. People tend to view others with suspicion and disregard when we are separated and cannot see each other up close. This is personified in the very next mitzvah, which is known by the Talmud as Gezel Hager. The Torah informs us that when someone has stolen from someone with no heirs and then denies having committed the crime, they must return the funds they stole to the Kohanim and then atone for their double crime of stealing and lying about it by bringing a guilt offering to the temple. The Talmud explains that this whole mitzvah refers to stealing from the convert, who is the only person in the Jewish nation who potentially has no heirs. How could a person be so treacherous as to rob from the most defenseless member of the Jewish community, the convert? Look at how we just read the book of Ruth on Shavuot, which upholds the Jewish value of chesed, of kindness, and especially singles out how we're meant to treat Ruth, the convert. Perhaps Scripture is indicating that it was specifically because Boaz was part of the Jewish community and never removed himself from that camp that he was able to see the value in every single person, including Ruth. By contrast, the person who became defiled and removed from the camp is the one who might end up stealing from the convert. His isolation causes him to disregard the value of others. The very next mitzvah is that of the sotah. Rashi points out that the reason why this law is adjacent to the previous one is because if someone fails to pay his due to the Kohanim, the surrogates for that oppressed convert, he will end up having to show up in front of the Kohen for another reason, which is to bring his wife suspected of adultery for the sotah procedure to the temple. What is the connection between the two? Is it simply because he's betrayed others that he suffers a similar betrayal from his wife? Perhaps there's a deeper message. The very ingredient that allowed Raskolnikov to commit murder was the same ingredient that caused him to push everyone in his life, including his friends, his mother and sister, and even his beloved Sonia, away from him. He viewed others with mistrust and condescension, viewing himself as different from everyone else. Is it any wonder that such a person who steals from the convert and fails to make restitution cannot sustain a healthy relationship with his spouse? Is it any wonder that his wife, this accused sotah, would seek companionship and friendship from someone else other than her detached husband? We then come to the last mitzvah in this series, which is that of the Nazir. While the classic commentaries create a connection between a passerby who sees the Sota protocols being performed in the temple and exhorts him to abstain from wine and become a Nazirite, perhaps the Torah is continuing its exhortation to Raskolnikov himself, the husband of the Sota. You who lived in isolation, stole from the convert, and drove your wife away from a loving relationship, you owe it to yourself to rehabilitate and normalize. It's a difficult process going from the mistrusting hermit to the accepting and loving member of society. But the first step is to remove the focus from yourself and your needs. Abstain from wine, let your hair grow long, and these will remind you how you are not the center of the universe. Do not come in contact with the dead, because the dead represent those who are the most isolated and removed from this world and its social order. Instead, work on integrating yourself back into the community of the living, those who have true value in this world because of their vitality and their ability to help you and everyone else. Everyone, without fail, will at some point in their life feel estranged and different from everyone else. That's normal. What's unhealthy, however, is to allow oneself to wallow in that isolation for any prolonged period. The danger of excessive isolation is the devaluation of others. When I look at another person, I should instead seek to emulate the Kohanim, who lovingly bless each and every Jew with the Birkat Kohanim, a blessing that lovingly bestows every imaginable spiritual and physical endowment to its recipient. This is why this blessing is listed immediately after the Nazir in our Parsha. Finally, you may know an isolated individual, someone who has become disenfranchised or disillusioned by the community. They may even have good reason for their removal from the collective, but don't give up on them. You'll help not only them but everyone else in society by reaching out and helping them become integrated once again. Call them up, invite them over for a coffee. Do a chesed for the potential Raskolnikovs and redeem humanity for them. Our goal should be to reach the Kohen's level of recognition and love for every single human being. If we can realize that, and if we can transform the Raskolnikov to a true lover of people, then we will bring immediate redemption to ourselves, dear friends, and to the entire world. May we see it. Bimhei Rabbi Amenu Amen. Here's wishing you a beautiful Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom.